Happy Saturday and good morning, everyone. Saturday, February the 1st. Unbelievable 2025. Time flies. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. And here we go. 59 will be the high today. 32 tonight. 61 on Sunday. Monday, 66 degrees. Remember last week, we're sitting here freezing and snow was coming down. And we were given weather reports like, hey, watch your step. Roads are bad. But now 59, and I rode to work this morning, rode the bike this morning. I'm going to go to the Motorcycle Expo when the show's over at 1 o'clock. 32 tonight and 61 on Sunday. We have later on in the morning, Maria Sherman's on the show on Sean Diddy Combs, which that topic and people around that have really become attention getters. But in the meantime, something is happening in the state, which has been, it's a python, it's a strangler. And the Democrats have introduced Senate Bill 25-003. It was introduced in the Colorado State, at the State House, rapidly making it through the process to become law. The second reading took place yesterday, and I'll talk about, they put it off. They put the reading off yesterday. The bill defines specified semi-automatic firearms. As a semi-automatic rifle, I can read this to you, or a semi-automatic shotgun with a detachable magazine, or a gas-operated semi-automatic handgun with a detachable magazine, which people inadvertently will call a clip. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, I'm reading it, distributing, transferring, selling, or purchasing a specified semi-automatic firearm, except that a person may transfer, and I've read this thing 5 times, and this is really legalese, except that a person may transfer a specified semi-automatic firearm to an heir, H-E-I-R, an individual residing in another state, or a federally licensed firearm dealer. The definitions are broad regarding firearms and the features to be banned. Practically no firearm available on the market can satisfy this. And I'm, a small gun owner in terms of how many guns I own, but everything that I have, if I say a collection, with 2 exceptions, could not pass this. This will effectively ban most of the firearms used and enjoyed by Coloradans every day, and likely shutter every gun shop in the state. I was with Alan Samuel on Friday. Alan and I had lunch together. And he, of course, owns Machine Gun Tours. He's a great friend. He's been a great teacher. And it'll shutter these gun shops. And I want to know what you think. 303-696-1971. Senate Bill 2503 would ban the manufacture, distribution, transfer, sale, or purchase of a specified semi-automatic firearm, which includes, now look, think about what you have, and I'd like maybe, and I know it's an inappropriate question to ask somebody about their guns, how many guns you got, or, that kind of a thing. But let's go over the ones you want to admit that you have. And it is not my business, believe me, any more than it's, your business how many guns I have. But, I'm willing to flush out today and say, yeah, I got one of these and one of these. But it includes semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, along with, I'm reading this, gas-operated semi-automatic handguns. Isn't that a 1911 45? Isn't that a 38? Isn't that a 9? Isn't that a Glock? I'm serious. There's people in this audience that forgot more about guns than I will ever know. But along with gas-operated semi-automatic handguns that have a detachable ammunition magazine, you drop out the bottom, you slap another one in. Now, you've crossed the line. So I've been gearing up all week, reading all week to get ready to do this. And so the great disappointment, yesterday, the 31st, the state Senate postponed the first floor vote for Senate Bill 2503, the nearly all-encompassing semi-automatic ban. The vote's been rescheduled for next Friday, February the 7th. I don't know why they postponed it. I've made some phone calls and I can't seem to find why. But I can tell you something. And I've asked this many times, is gun control people control? And remember, the Second Amendment is there to protect the First Amendment. And I've kind of been a little Mr. History buff again this week. But reading, I've had to put a couple of things aside because I'm reading so many things at once. But I'm looking at this Second Amendment and where it comes from in terms of our framers. And I had one view of this, that the origins of the Second Amendment. There's a book, a historian by the name of David Young. And I can't tell you how important this guy has become to me. And his book is The Origins of the Second Amendment, and I'm reading it online. The necessity of an armed populace, protection against disarming of the citizenry, and the need to guard against select militia and assure a real militia which could defend liberty against any standing force the government might raise, were topics that are interspread through the ratification process of back with the framing fathers. And there's so much hogwash that gets kicked out that isn't true. And I'm reading the James Madison Research Library because I want people to get an idea where I'm reading. And they have a lengthy piece, the drafting and ratification of the Second Amendment. And again, the well-regulated militia that all the left and all the libs say somehow could be interpreted as the National Guard. And these guys are the furthest thing from that. And they say, nevertheless, a properly functioning militia fundamentally presupposes, I'm reading this, that the individual citizen be allowed to keep, practice, and train himself in the use of firearms. Richard Henry Lee, who was a mentor to many who signed the Constitution. This is in January 25th, 1788. A militia, when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves and include, according to the past and general usage of the states, all men capable of bearing arms. To preserve liberty, it is an essential and whole body of people always possessing arms, and to be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them. I just think this thing is just amazing. And Americans I think fantasy baseball stats are more important than the timeline of the American Revolution. And we need to remember the proclamation line. And I didn't know about this, so I'm not going to pretend like I know. But the proclamation line of 1763, and it is the one day. You know, this whole thing is very, very, very distorted. And if you think, we've always believed, or anybody who's witnessed the history of gun control, it starts in one place, but ultimately where I think it's going to, they're telling you where they want this to end. So our forefathers, as they're always dubbed, or the framers, insisted that every American possess an unalienable and inherent right of self-defense. This is from the Madison Group. A lawfully armed citizenry is a free citizenry. No government ever constructed has merited the total trust of its people. And I'm also reading Nietzsche right now, which is probably some, but Nietzsche has that great great soliloquy of everything the government says is a lie. This is Nietzsche. Everything that the government says is a lie. Number two, everything the government has, it's taken from somebody. Say it again. Say it again. Everything that the government says is a lie, and everything that the government has, it's taken. Now, I guess the left can challenge the NRA all at once, but until it defeats those ideas, it won't transform American attitudes towards guns. And the evidence is pretty overwhelming that gun control, or is gun control people control? Is the Second Amendment there to protect the First? If the First were to go, who would protect it? And right now, there's big battles about the First Amendment. I know that most of you are aware of it, but boy, oh boy, this Senate Bill 25003, it's been introduced here in the state. The second reading was to be yesterday, and they postponed the reading. But the bill defines a semi-automatic firearm. Well, I go through the list of guns that I have with two exceptions, and they're revolvers. Every single thing that I have or own as a firearm fits this bill that they don't want you to have. Every one. A semi-automatic rifle, a semi-automatic shotgun with detachable mag, or a gas-operated semi-automatic handgun. I had to make some phone calls. That's the 1911 Browning model that is everybody. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, or purchasing a specified semi-automatic firearm, except, now, if you get this, you want the next one. So if the Dems get this in the state of Colorado, they'll put gun stores out of business. Except when a person may transfer a specified semi-automatic firearm to an heir. So, like my son, or my grandson, or my daughter. An individual residing in another state, or a federally licensed firearms dealer. You got the Fed ticket. The definitions will regarding firearms and to be featured, to be banned. There's nothing out there that's available on the market to satisfy this legislation. Now I'm going to bring a guy on, and we've been good friends for a long, long time. He's an attorney. He's a motorcyclist. We ride together. Pump him up is Wayne Eldridge, and I'll bring him on the show. Is he ready to go? No? The other guy. Yeah, but line one, it wasn't that the guy that just was on the air with Caldera, and they're having some big war. All right, well, I'd rather do this one. I'd rather do this. Hey, Wade, thanks, man.
Just was on the air with Caldera.
Yeah, turn your radio down. There you are.
All right.
Hello.
Yeah, you're on the air. Good morning. Thanks, man.
Hey, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. You actually had sent me a note on this exact topic, and I said I'd been working all week to get ready for it. So what are your thoughts? He's an attorney. He's a motorcyclist. We've been longtime friends. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, here's my question. I have not read the bill yet, and I'm not a firearms expert. I am a collector mainly of antiques. But here's the question. I can see how with any automatic handgun, or semi-automatic, I should say, semi-automatic gun, you can rack the slide and drop in one cartridge. All right, there's one. How would you, I don't understand the mechanics, how would you get any more cartridges in the firearm?
Well, the first gun I ever owned was a J.C. Higgins Sears and Roebuck, although it was probably third hand or fourth hand, 22 single shot rifle. They had what we call stingers. They had when you wanted to cock it, you pulled the stinger back, and it locked in. And then when you pulled the trigger, it released the stinger. And of course, they're rim fires, so you could shoot one more like a musket. You shoot a musket,
Right.
yeah. So, but everything, and I've seen your collection, and they're called the bill defines a specified semi-automatic firearm. Everything you got on that wall, everything. I mean, everything I got, with the exception of 2 revolvers. I want somebody that knows what they're talking about, because obviously I don't. But the bill prohibits.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't either. Here's what troubles me. I happen to have done a little research on this because I'm defending a case in federal court. So there's been a lot of going-ons about when the government can prohibit people with previous felony convictions from possessing weapons. There's a good case out of the Third Circuit, but basically it goes back to this New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, and the cases after that say, well, what was the state of the law when the Constitution was enacted, right? And then, well, if they didn't have the prohibitions then you can't really prohibit it now. It's a violation of the Second Amendment. But we didn't have semi-automatic weapons when the Constitution was enacted.
True, but also,
but
also, when I hear that argument, we didn't have radio and television when that argument for the First Amendment was there.
Good point.
I mean, so somebody said, well, you didn't have these. No, but we didn't have radio and TV and blogging and the internet when the first is put in place.
Sure. Well, the reason I mention that is because I don't think it's a done deal that any court is going to say prohibition of semi-automatic weapons, because that's really what this is.
Absolutely,
I'm not sure they're going to say it is a violation of the Second Amendment. I mean, I think they should, but who knows?
With this court, and I'm not talking about the Supremes. I'm talking about state of Colorado, and
right.
So the bill 25003 that bans the specified semi-automatic firearms. This is important stuff, and I haven't listened to much talk radio this week. I don't know if anybody's really taken it on, but the vote was supposed to be yesterday. They postponed the vote until next Friday, but it is in a nutshell. This is it in a nutshell. 2503, banning the manufacture, distribution, sale, transfer, or purchase of a specified semi-automatic firearm, which includes semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, along with gas-operated semi-automatic handguns that have a detachable ammunition magazine. That's everything you got. Hey, you go on the show today?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let me call you when this show's over.
All right, Peter, one final thing.
Yep.
The Post was saying, the bill got out of committee. It only needs 18 votes to get past the Senate, and it's got 18 sponsors.
It does. I love you. See you this afternoon. All right. Hang on, everybody. morning, everybody. It's a Saturday. 59 will be the high. 52 tonight, 61 on Sunday. First time, lines are wide open. Normally, this does not happen, so jump the show, or if you got it busy before, jump the show. 303-696-1971. And talking about gun control in the state of Colorado, that's really, it's like a python, you know, it just flips another loop, and they're not going to be satisfied until there's a Second Amendment, a blind spot, perhaps, in the eyes of constitutionalists on the left, the party of intellectuals, and they want you to be unarmed. Danny Kaplis' law firm, my guy, my friend, he helped my family. Dan suggests that you choose an attorney who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you to everybody involved in the case. And Dan's a son of a cop. We've been over how he grew up and what he did coming up. And he's believed to be the only attorney in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million dollar verdicts in a Colorado crash case or crash cases. Dan's also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplis Law, the official law firm of the Nuggets and the Avalanche. He's just a good guy. I spent a couple hours with him on his radio show back a few weeks ago. Dan Kaplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases, accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis. He can represent good people, all walks of life, without regard of ability to pay. He is my friend. He has been a great guide for me. If you need Danny's help, pick up the phone, 303-770-5551, and ask. 303-770-5551. On the internet, Dan's last name is Caplis, Kaplis. 303-770-5551. The phone call is more than worth it. We'll go here to Briscoe. Hey, my boy, I owe you too. Good morning. Thanks for calling the show.
Oh, you bet, Pete. Good talking to you. I tried getting in on the last. I know June Def a little bit.
Okay.
So at the end of last, I tried to call, but you said you didn't have anybody calling. I'm like, oh heck, I'll call in. You know, gun control. I'm not a big gun guy myself. I had a brother commit suicide. And so I kind of stay away from them. But like, you know, I train martial arts, and everybody should have a gun that's, you know, believes in the Constitution and has the wherewithal to do it, etc. And it's, to me, you know, it's the slow creep. They've gotten kids have never shot a gun. They've never skinned an animal. Like, I bet you would make the left explode, their heads explode, if kids started having to go out and shoot an animal and skin it and eat it and get back to that kind of thing. You know, and Joe Rogan has been a big, accidentally, you know, he became a hunter. I think he turned a whole bunch of people never thought about hunting into hunters, you know, and it's a change in the right direction. Like, eating meat and owning guns doesn't make you insane. In fact, it's probably one of the most sane things a person can do, no matter where they live on this planet. And my son is cheering that I just said that. I have an 11-year-old who's playing with a toy shotgun.
No, it is this proposition that the Dems have in front of the people of Colorado right now. It's Senate Bill 25003, and it will ban the manufacture, distribution, transfer, sale, purchase of a specified semi-automatic firearms, including semi-automatic rifles. Well, that's ARs. Forget, you know, that's AKs. It's, you know, down the line.
SKS.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
And,
you know.
go ahead. I'm sorry. You say.
So I heard you talking about that just a little bit ago, and you know, Colorado has obviously went very liberal, and I was like, you know what this is? This is a smoke signal. This is Colorado law. The people that want things crazy, it's them trying to. It's a smoke signal. Like, hey, in Colorado, we're still going to try and get rid of all the guns.
Well,
And it's insane.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
They want heroin injection and firearms taken away. I mean, they make no sense, but to them, remember, it do. You know, it does make sense. And
yeah, and you know, the Nietzsche thing was, I've heard only a few of his quotes, and I didn't know that anything the government says is a lie. I haven't heard that one.
That was one. I'm reading Nietzsche in bits and pieces. You can't just sit down and pound it out. But
and you know, I've mentioned to you that Soft White Underbelly channel,
right?
And you had said several of your friends have told you to watch it. I don't know if you watched any of it, but further on Nietzsche, that a big name, Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
He has a ton of stuff online you can watch. He does quite a bit on Nietzsche because he realizes how brilliant he was, and literally that guy was predicting things 100 years before it fricking happened.
Absolutely. He said anything the government says to you is a lie. Just consider it a lie. And he said everything that the government has, it took from somebody.
Yeah.
And you rock back and you think, you know, that's pretty true. and,
right. I mean, they can't give you anything they haven't taken from somebody else. And, you know, in the initial stages, people want to boo-hoo what happened in America with the Indians. But it's like nowadays, they taxed us way too much, and now they're giving us a bit back, and people get happy about that. Oh.
Why do you think the Democratic Party in general, many of the legislators in specific, want you to be unarmed?
I think the answer is simple. You are less likely. You have become even less of a threat, and we need, you know, we need to keep this country's unique. Correct? Like,
absolutely.
It was a revolution. We kicked out the overseers.
Yeah.
And that attitude needs to keep going.
Well,
like till the last day that this country's a country, and you know, I hope that's for many more decades or many more centuries.
When the Vietnamese kick out the French, or the Kenyans kick out the British, or, you know, you pick it. And people got upset. And I said, wait a minute, we kicked out the British. We kicked out the British. We bought the French out. We bought the Spanish out, but we kicked out the British.
Yep.
And if we could and should, why should not the fill in the blanks kick them out? But why gun control doesn't work? The Second Amendment guarantees law-abiding Americans the right to keep and bear arms, and over time, gun control laws have placed limits on that freedom. That's the truth.
Yeah, it's how when you talk about communism, you call it the sweet song of communism. Is that how you phrase it?
Fascism's sweet song.
Okay. This is the sweet song of take the guns away and
you'll be safe.
You know, I think they're playing the long game. They don't mind if it takes literally 5 decades or 10 decades to get rid of all the guns. They're going to do it because of their end result that they want. It's so bad. It's so horrible. It's like we need to look at this like it's a car crash that's going to happen in 10 seconds, and we need to react as if it's that immediate.
Gun control is an umbrella term that refers to laws, ordinances that restrict how law-abiding citizens can own, buy, or use firearms. And these vary from state to state, local levels, federal levels. This means that the Second Amendment protects your right to keep and bear arms, may be different restrictions placed on the right depending on where you live. And that's bizarre.
Correct.
Because
Correct. And your age, right? Obviously.
yeah.
And I had heard it, I don't know if it was on Caldera or where recently, arms. And I was telling my 11-year-old this, we were listening earlier and he brought up a good point. So I was talking about arms. I'm like, Milo, I heard earlier, arms, that means everything. That means
Yes.
a knife, a gun, a headbutt from my forehead, my elbow, my knee,
Yeah.
a rear naked choke.
Yeah.
And the horrible example that made him laugh is my front bumper too.
Sure.
You know, and again, I was telling him, and he's traveled to Europe once. I don't know how much he remembers it, but I brought up these Middle Easterners in Europe have used front bumpers to mow down 20, 40, 60 people
Sure.
on, I don't know, easily a dozen occasions. Like there's a ton of things that could be considered arms. And yeah, that's dangerous, but we need to have, if you take out all our teeth, we're no longer a wolf.
Criminals do not obey gun control laws. Criminals
Amen.
criminals by definition do not obey the law. Gun control
And
laws,
furthermore,
they only affect law-abiding people who go through legal avenues to obtain firearms. Criminals overwhelmingly get their firearms through illegal channels and will never be deterred by state or federal laws. That's why, this is my payoff, that's why background checks have virtual no impact on criminals.
Right. Yeah, yep. I still agree.
I just went through this. I let my CCW expire. Why?
Okay.
It's Pete Boyles in general. So
people, we're all busy. I understand.
No. Some of us are stupid, and
well, the ones that say they're smart are the ones that are the most.
No, I had to.
The stupidest.
I had to go through the process again to get a CCW, and I did it, and and in Denver, getting a CCW in Denver is really, they make it very difficult as opposed to Weld County or Douglas County, and it's so, but I got it. But but it dawned on me from all the times I've done crime stories and read crime stories, and you've read crime stories. Criminals obtain firearms through illegal channels.
That's right.
And they'll never be deterred by state and federal laws. And that's why the background check that they did on me to give me a CCW, a background check has virtual no impact on criminals. I mean,
think about
they
don't
this.
Care.
Yeah, no, think about it. Right. So what good is it? Criminals go through these illegal avenues and they get firearms. They're not going to submit to background checks. And ultimately, only law-abiding citizens will be impacted by extended background checks. Background checks, they're not effective.
Right. What good is it? Is it provides revenue, and it gives them a statistic of who's still willing to play the game legally.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there's some, I heard a thing, this bill that's trying to get passed, it was written by Bloomberg people. And, that scares the hell out of me because we know how horrible the gun laws are in New York.
Sure.
And they want to put that here. This is Colorado, where there are mountains and there is hunters, et cetera, et cetera. The gun laws, they should get stronger in the pro-gun way rather than the anti-gun way, in my opinion. But my opinion is one frickin' person, right?
Final question: Can anybody out there today beat John Jones?
No. Well, you know who can beat him and has beat him?
Who?
John.
He's beaten himself. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's he's that good.
He is that good.
That
isn't he?
good.
He is.
And it's so funny. It's been forever ago. Probably when I first got a face-to-face with you, I was teaching regular people.
Let me do this. Let me put you on. Let me put you on hold. We'll take the break.
That's fine.
Can I do that? Can I, Briscoe? Can I hold you? Put him on hold. Would you please, Adam?
Oh, yeah.
Put him on hold. But gun control, we're talking about the Democrats have introduced in the Senate 25003, banning manufacture, distribution, transfer, sale, purchase of specified semi-automatic firearms, including semi-automatic rifles and shotguns and gas-operated semi-automatic handguns. In other words, everything that I have, and I don't have a tremendous amount of guns, but more than one. Only two of them that I have can pass this, and they're revolvers. Everything else, forget. So I'm going to come back. He's a UFC guy, he's an MMA fighter, and I want to talk to him about that. It is February 1, 59 will be the high today, and Maria Sherman will join us later in the morning on Sean Diddy Combs. I'm Peter Boyles. It's going to be 59, 61 tomorrow, 66 Monday.
Wednesday night in D.C. have been identified. 28-year-old First Officer Sam Lilly died alongside 34-year-old Captain Jonathan Campos in the midair collision with the Black Hawk helicopter near Ronald Reagan National Airport. Lilly's dad, Timothy, confirmed his son's death. Sam, who was recently engaged, was months away from being promoted to captain. Timothy called it, quote, undoubtedly the worst day of my life, saying he initially couldn't believe it was his son's flight. The two flight attendants on the plane have been identified as Ian Epstein and Denasia Elder. President Donald Trump sending a heartfelt message to all the victims in a news conference where he addressed the nation after the crash.
We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God.
Hamas-led terrorists freed 8 more hostages from the Gaza Strip in exchange for 110 Palestinian prisoners, most of whom have been convicted of murder and terrorism. They were released by Israel as part of the ceasefire deal that started earlier this month.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Wild, Salem News Channel.
Saturday, everyone, February 1, 2025, good old 710 KNUS. Thanks for being here. 59 the high and 32 tonight, 61 on Sunday and 66 on Monday. We're talking about the Senate Democrats introducing 25003 that would ban the manufacture, distribution, transfer, sale, purchase of specified semi-automatic firearms, which includes semi-automatic rifles and shotguns and gas-operated semi-automatic handguns, and in essence, or in reality, everything you got. It's like, and if you want to talk about your ownership, call the show. We'll do that, and we'll see where it goes from there. And in the meantime, we've become these phone friends, and his name is Briscoe, and he's a teacher of MMA, UFC. I love it. And I just had a blind question on the end, was about this legendary fighter that if you don't follow MMA or UFC, his name is John Jones, and he's dubbed Bones Jones. And flat out, I've seen Rogan just say, nobody can beat this guy. And you go, nobody can except himself.
Yeah. I'll correct you a little. I've done jiu-jitsu for like over 25 years.
Okay.
I've never fought MMA. I have trained with plenty of MMA guys.
Take it
the
back.
one guy you and I would know, it would be Alvin Robinson.
Oh, yeah,
some
sure.
years back here in
yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah.
So he trained in the same group that I trained. We were all under a guy named John Crouch. He had a gym called Mahai Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's changed hands. I no longer am affiliated with those guys, but there's so many good schools in town. But yeah, I've trained with a lot of MMA guys, and thank God most of them are nice and decent. Only a few are absolute knuckleheads.
No,
but yeah, Jones is a phenomenon.
He can't keep it on the road. And I follow it. You follow all of that on YouTube and on the internet. You don't do it in the straight world. It's on the alternative world. And
yeah.
I mean, I watch that guy. Oh, he's just amazing. And
he is. And you know, the arm and leg length and his athleticism, and the fact that he had two older brothers that probably used to beat the you-know-what out of him growing up, that's what makes those guys. Like, I've noticed that pattern. Somebody pointed it out more than me. And I was like, I've noticed it now. Like, a lot of the guys I train with had older brothers that used to whoop up on them.
Yeah.
And it makes it makes them tough.
No, my uncle took me to the Y to learn to box. It's like,
yeah,
sick of getting
smart
hit.
move.
Yeah, no, it's a way smart
move.
move. And
yeah,
it's so they're what's happened to the UFC, and now they've combined with the WWE because of Vince McMahon. Now they're one giant corporate entity, and because of
I wonder if that's going to mess it up.
You know, you think about that, but then Rousey crosses over, and she's the Barney badass till she hooks into Holly Holmes, and Holly Holmes Holmes takes her to school.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And you know this thing, and then instead of waiting for the rematch, she takes a second fight, and she gets dropped in that fight too. And then so she goes to the WWE and kind of makes a name for herself, but she's so nobody there liked her, and so that's really hard. In pro wrestling, you got to get along with people, and MMA or UFC. And you know what I watched too, and I was going to ask you, the Saudi Arabians and the no-gi jiu-jitsu. Boy,
awesome.
And how good?
They've done it for a long time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
So the Abu Dhabi, the ADCC Abu Dhabi Combat Challenge is a no-gi tournament,
right.
And it's grapplers, it's jiu-jitsu guys, it's submission wrestlers, and they've been around easily 2 decades. And I didn't realize that the pay is dog doo-doo. Okay, they don't pay them all that well. Like, to win it doesn't do good, but it helped the sport a ton because literally guys who didn't want to fight MMA that were really good at jiu-jitsu. It gave them the chance to possibly do it full time and not have a regular job. And it helped. And now it's gotten way better. There's an organization by a guy named Craig Jones who's directly competing against the ADCC. And he has a different money backer. And there's a lot of money in the Middle East in MMA and jiu-jitsu. Renzo Gracie is one of the biggest guys around on the East Coast. His main facility, where people like George St. Pierre came up in, is right in New York City. I've trained there a few times. I like it. I like Marcelo Garcia is about 10 blocks away in New York. I like Marcelo's gym better, but that's pure jiu-jitsu. Renzo's has MMA, jiu-jitsu, etc. That building is owned by Middle Eastern money.
Oh man!
And Renzo is a legend and very likable guy. If you have to fight him, he's not a likable guy.
No, not what they're the Gracies.
You know, yeah. I would say probably almost 2 decades ago, the prince, whoever it is with the deep pockets that is friends with Renzo, he bought that building and said, "This is yours. Get your guys here, train here." And I found that out kind of recently. I was like, "Holy cow!"
Briscoe, who's the guy? Is his first or last name is Ryan? He is unstoppable.
Is he the red? Ryan. Gordon Ryan.
Gordon Ryan.
So again, Renzo's school that I was just talking about, that's where he came up.
Oh man.
There's a very famous coach who has no accolades in competition named, and I've told you this guy's name before, John Donaher.
Now I know who he is now.
He's from New Zealand.
Yep.
He was a power lifter. He was in America getting a PhD. So he's a very intellectual guy. And he was a bouncer at night, a friend of his. So yes, Gordon Ryan is one of the best. And the steroids has gotten into jiu-jitsu, and he unapologetically will tell you, "You dang right I use steroids."
Yeah, he did.
Because they don't regulate it.
Yep, he said it, yes.
Certain there's a thing called the IBJJF International. It's one of the big tournament organizations that uses the gi and no gi, and they're worldwide or at least nationwide. And I think they test for drugs, because I actually knew a lady who worked kind of in the office and talks about these Brazilians, man. They're all on the steroids and they're all hotheads and they all lie.
Yep.
And because she's got to be the person to tell them,
well,
you can't compete.
I think I told you when they first came here, and I knew who they were because of my background, but and I invited them all to come in the studio, and they came in a couple different times, and I was working at Cat Radio, and I met the old man. He was still alive. Yeah, he was still alive.
So, and one of my buddies here in town, he has, like Alvin had been around Alio a bit. Some people will call him Helio, which I think is condescending. Yeah. His name's Alio.
Yeah.
Alio Gracie, he's a phenomenon, and he's a tough old man. Oh, you know, because I have a good friend here in town. He's a black guy, at least 225 pounds. He got his black belt from Hoyce. And, you know, he's known in this town. A lot of people don't like him. Some people do like him. His name's Griff. And Griff tells stories. Griff is very good friends with Hoyce. I mean, off air, I would tell you he's a butt kisser to Hoyce. But the big picture, my friend Griff, who's born and raised here, lived here, and he's very good friends with Hoyce, received his black belt from Hoyce in Miami at one of their giant schools. By the way, that school is where some of Trump's kids train now.
I understand Ivanka, that the Trump kids.
Ivanka trains at the Valente. They call them the Valente brothers.
Yep.
And they're, their last name is not Gracie, but they're third generation instructors and practitioners of jiu-jitsu.
I read that they do. That they train.
Hoyce has told. I've heard like third-hand stories. Hoyce likes to drive like a madman.
Crazy.
And this is back when the old man was alive, and his old man would have an ear to ear grin.
We're going to run out of time. The story they told me, he said, we're not civilized. He told me that. That's a
And they're
secret. We're not civilized. Listen, I'll call you. I'll call you. We have one line open. Go with it. Saturday morning, 710, KNUS, Denver's talk station. It's the first morning of February. 303-696-1971 is the number. 59 will be the high today, 32 tonight, 61 on Sunday, and 66 on Monday. We're talking about Senate Bill 25003, that it's banning manufacturing, distribution, transfer, sale of every firearm you have. So, and we got open lines, and Briscoe, the jiu-jitsu instructor, came in and talked. Ski resorts are experiencing better snow conditions right now. It's like tonnage up there. Perfect time to take your skis and take them over, snowboards, get them tuned, look for new gear. If you didn't get what you wanted for the holidays, now's the time. Larson Ski and Sport, the best winter sports equipment. Larson Ski and Sport, located just south of I-70 on Kipling. So whether you're looking to rent or buy, Larson's got you covered. They're dedicated to providing you with the best skiing experience possible. The convenience of Larson's is unbeatable. A perfect stop on your way up or down the mountain. You find them in large wooden buildings that come, here you are, you're westbound on I-70. Get off on the Kipling exit, come down the ramp, make a left, go under the tunnel, right underneath I-70. Come out the other side, then look to your right. And there's a big wooden building. That's Larson Ski and Sport. John and the guys at Larson's are absolutely experts at everything you need for winter sports. You go and see them. His Jack, John's son, is just, he's the boot king. Stop in today and tell him I sent you 7 days a week. Remember, for kids and grandkids, you rent. Larson Ski and Sport, south of I-70 on Kipling. If you're coming eastbound, just stay, get off on the Kipling exit. It just stays to the right. When as soon as you come down and hit Kipling, you look to your right, you'll see them. Larson Ski and Sport, 7 days a week, 303-423-0654, larsonsport.com. All right, who's lines are jammed? We go to Bruce. Bruce, you waited. Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning, Peter. You were asking earlier about what would be included and excluded in this bill, as far as which firearms.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I've been following some of the debate about it because some of the phrasing's a little, shall we say, unclear.
Yeah.
As in, gas operated and such.
Yes.
But I think one aspect, and this, of course, is intent versus execution, and who knows how that would play out in the end if this passes through as stated, because, of course, there's a lot of opportunities for amendments and changes through the whole process. When you're talking about the gas-operated semi-automatic pistols, yeah, I mean, by some definition, you could say they're all gas-operated.
Absolutely.
But I think, and others agree with me, the intent is to target at least the pistol versions by, say, like ATF rules of AKs and ARs. Because if your barrel is a certain length, below a certain length, then it's a pistol, even if it has the same mechanisms in the back of it as a full-size rifle.
But and again, I'm no expert and don't pretend to be one, but just as a reader. And when the bill defines, and I'll go back to the work I've done, a specified semi-automatic firearm. Now, as a semi-automatic rifle or semi-automatic shotgun, and this is why I get kicked with a detachable mag or gas-operated semi-automatic handgun. They don't say pistol, they say handgun. Yeah. With detachable mag. That means, you drop the mag out the bottom. And then the bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, purchase. I mean, what it is, this is I see it as a block. No matter where you turn, you're going to run up against it.
Oh, it's broad. It's broad. I'm just saying, as an example that you brought up earlier, it would take an even broad interpretation on top of a broad interpretation to include, say, like the 1911 that you mentioned.
Yeah,
pistol.
but isn't Browning the guy with the? And again, my lack of history, but when Browning develops that original 1911, that's the model for so many other semi-automatic handguns, right?
Yeah. It kind of set the standard.
Yeah.
The Army.
Yes.
Before that, the U.S. Army was using 38 revolvers.
Yes. Until the Philippines.
Right. They found them insufficient during the time we were there.
They couldn't stop the Mori coming at them.
Yeah. So Browning turned around and came up with that design around then, hence the model name, 1911.
But I just to give it away, I have a 9mm. I have a couple of different firearms, handguns, but they're all built on that semi-automatic firearm model, the Browning model, or a I don't want to say a knockoff because that's not the right thing to say.
Variant. Variant.
Yeah, variant. Oh, I like that. I'll steal that variant. But so
it's an homage when you like it. It's a ripoff when you don't.
Yeah, I mean it's a knockoff when you don't. But I have I have a Beretta and I have a I have a couple of Colts and I have but they're all basically the same model, are they not?
Mm-hmm. Basically, I mean, there's variations on, just how the recoil works and feeds and that sort of stuff, but 85+% of it's the same.
All right.
So, anywho, the general interpretation right now among people who are reading stuff, because, this is all still up in the air, of course, a lot of it's still up in the air, is those type of pistols semi-automatic pistols would not be affected by this. But and the kicker on this bill is there's another aspect you haven't even gotten into, where if you look further down the text, it says the Colorado AG is the one who gets to make those definitions and amend those definitions down the line.
Well, you know where he is too. I mean,
it all depends who's sitting in that seat.
Well, right now, the guy that's sitting there, you can pre-guess what he's going to do, what he would do.
So.
Well, but
anywho,
no, let me come because you're good.
Little info on such.
No, because you're good. I want to come back. So banning, and so practically no firearms are available on the market.
Right, on the market, not possession, but on the market.
That could satisfy this. I mean, it effectively, and this is the notes I made to myself, but it effectively bans most of the firearms used and enjoyed by Coloradans every day.
It does. It is broad. It's very broad. But again, there'll be amendments, and to clarify, I'm not going to sit here at this point and say if this bill in itself is a good idea, a bad idea, or what. But just trying to talk about the details.
What's the purpose? What's the purpose of this? To disarm you?
I got to say my view on gun control overall has been evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So to waffle, I don't really want to claim which way or how good this bill as a, let's say, benefit to the general population is or not. So I'm gonna defer on that. I mean, it's in line with. Okay, let me. I'll bring up one point.
All right.
You figure for like the past 4 or 5 years, every year there's been a broad assault weapon ban. That's what they typically call it. Bill put before the state legislature, and it normally falls at one point or another. Lots of little other stuff gets through, but the big, and I'm air quoting, the big ban bill goes through and typically falls apart in one reason or another. One of the stated reasons behind this bill being so broad, with basically just saying anything with a detachable magazine, is the fact that the manufacturers did.
Yeah, right.
But basically everyone in the state ignored it as far as individual sales at stores and such.
But now,
There's been practically zero enforcement of it in the past 11 years. The only people who have ever been charged with it, to my knowledge, are tack-on charges where you do something else awful and then they say, oh, hey, you got a oversized mag, by definitions of this bill. Part of making this bill so broad to say all detachable magazines is effectively saying, look, you guys never enforced the over 15, so we're just going to make it all of them.
Yeah.
And then you have no excuses, and you're going to have to enforce it.
on one of my handguns, I have the extended mag.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the drops down another 4 inches, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's out the window if this passes. But then if I'm pulled over, here's one. I was trying to talk to a cop friend of mine. So I'm driving and I'm pulled over, and I'm told by people that I respect, tell the officer that you have a gun. Now there's other people who say you don't have to tell him anything or her anything, but you say, you know, I have a gun in the car.
Law varies from state to state, by the way, on that.
Yeah, but I mean, what happens in Colorado when you tell the officer I have a gun in the car, and if he or she says I'd like to see it, and it's an extended mag or any of these problems, now do you have a better problem or a bigger? Do you have another problem?
Well, it all depends how technical you want to get.
Yeah.
I mean, the exception to the magazine rule or law passed back in 2013 was all current ownership is fine.
Okay.
So you could say, been in continuous possession of this magazine since 2013, and you'd be cool.
All right.
Is that the truth or not? You know,
See, here we
it's your
are.
call if you want to lie about it or not.
Right.
But it's a claim, and there's practically no way to prove whether or not you've been in constant possession, unless it has a big manufactured in 2018 stamp on it.
Would you, if you got pulled over for speeding or running a light or something, would you tell the officer that you have a gun in the car?
Well, I don't put myself in that position because I don't.
Let's pretend.
Okay.
Right.
If I did, odds are I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't volunteer it, and I wouldn't. I would probably decline to answer the question.
Ooh. Another step.
As far as I know, I don't have to answer that question.
They're telling me from the other side of the wall, Adam said in Colorado, you are not required to tell the officer you have a gun.
Right. That's my understanding too.
Yeah.
So you don't have to volunteer it.
Yeah. But if they ask you, you can dummy?
Yep.
Wow. This is so complex now. And I've spent my week doing two things, and one of them is reading to get ready for this show since they started 25003. And the more I read, the more I realized I don't know about all of these proposals. And I got drifted back, and it was really a cool drift into the Madison Society, which you think would be some, and it probably is, some really interesting organization on the East Coast, but they're great defenders of the Second Amendment. And I started reading these people, and they make so much sense about what the framing fathers believed. And there's one guy I came across, I mentioned him in the last hour, Richard Henry Lee. Richard Henry Lee was a mentor to many who signed the Constitution. And I'm reading Richard Henry Lee, January 25, 1788. It's a while ago. A militia, writes Richard Lee, a militia when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves, that include, according to the past and general usage of the states all men capable of bearing arms. To preserve liberty, it's essential that the body of people always possess arms, be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them. That's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah. I mean, to get to as you put it, to drift into constitutional creation and interpretation, there you really got to dig. And I'm not saying that this ever was a big thing, but you really got to dig to find the context behind this stuff.
Who these guys
I mean,
are.
we all see the final material.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Constitution,
Right.
but the background that went into it, you got to search around for that. I mean, as a not exactly one-to-one comparison, but did you ever read People's History of the United States by Zinn?
Yeah, and I'm not a fan.
Okay. Well, one part I found very interesting, because I hadn't even really heard about this before, was his talk about the negative reactions to the Declaration of Independence and such, and the not everybody residing in the colonies was on board.
Weren't they? Weren't they? They were called Tories, weren't they?
Well, Tories were supporters of the Brits.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like Shays Rebellion and such.
Okay. All right.
That happened shortly after, where even after the revolution happened and got legs and was continuing, some folks said, nope, I'm still not on board with this. And you don't hear about that.
The Whiskey Rebellion.
Yep. And you got to dig to even find the names of some of these.
But it's
these movements.
It's a great series of events in history. Is the Irish, Scots-Irish, Presbyterians, they couldn't get the corn over the Alleghenies. They could get it over when they squeezed it, but not the other way. And so they weren't going to pay the taxes.
Yep.
And they were against it. And by the time Washington gets the army there, they're gone. Where'd they go? Kentucky, Tennessee, and they're all the great whiskey makers of the, and they're also the beginning of stock car racing. But it's a And I don't know, I'm just following some people. And we stopped at this place, and we might have been west and north of Sturgis or Rapid City. And a guy had, he had strapped on the outside too. And I said, I see, and I was trying to make conversation. He said, I said, I see you have open carry. He spins and he says, we have constitutional carry. In other words, what I am doing is constitutionally guaranteed to me. I don't need, but again, the Second Amendment, as its critics write, the Second Amendment is the only amendment in the Constitution that you have to ask permission for. In other words, that's strange. That I don't have to ask permission for the First Amendment or the Third, but I have to ask permission for the Second. And it's this, what we're talking about. If you just joined us, Senate Bill 25003 has been introduced in the State House. It's Democrats, and it's the second reading was to be yesterday, and they changed it to the following Friday. And let me just skim the bill, but it takes a second to do it right. The bill defines a specified semi-automatic firearm as a semi-automatic rifle. Now think about this, Jay, with me. If you have firearms, what do you have that doesn't meet these definitions? Specified semi-automatic firearm. semi-automatic rifle, semi-automatic shotgun with detachable mag, or gas-operated semi-automatic handgun with detachable mag. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, purchasing a specified semi-automatic firearm, except when a person may transfer a specific semi-automatic firearm to an heir, an individual residing in another state, which I'm sure that's weird, or a federally licensed firearm dealer. The definitions are so broad regarding firearms and features to be banned. Practically no firearm is available that can satisfy that. I have 2 revolvers. I think they could get past the ban. Effectively, that ban would be everything that I have. Now, think about and it's none of my business what you have or don't have, but do you have do you have firearms? And then you don't have to answer any of this. I apologize.
Well, let me qualify. By nature of what I do, I'd rather not. You've studied it. You know what they're trying to do. But I do have something that's very interesting in Spain, because they cannot have firearms.
Right.
They have the best pellet guns that are supersonic, and I bought one. And it's actually a 22 caliber air gun that is more powerful than a 22 long rifle, and very effective. But I have a challenge for whoever wants to sign this bill. It used to be that the arch in St. Louis was the edge of the West, you know?
Gateway.
So the challenge is simple. I want them to try to walk from St. Louis to Denver, and they can bring a knife and they can bring a way of fire. But if they don't bring a firearm, they will be eaten by the time they hit Kansas City by an animal, 2-legged, 4-legged, whatever. That's how the West was settled, is the ability to defend ourselves against all of those things.
Yes,
the mountain lion up there. I mean, have you seen a grizzly bear in person? Talk about being afraid. Oh my gosh.
So tell me, what is the ultimate goal of Senate Bill 2503 in the Democratic Party? What is their ultimate goal? What's the purpose?
Well, the guys that I run around with, we call them chipmunks and scallywags and chipmunk eaters. That's what I call them. I don't think they have a clue as to what life's about.
What do you think the ultimate goal or the reason to have this is?
I don't know, Peter.
Well, but there has to be.
Frustrating.
I understand, but there is a, it's one of the places that gun control was first practiced was in Reconstruction, not allowing Black people to own guns. And this is another aspect that I've been reading about. And so when the Klan came to this, Black man's cabin and lit their crosses and, lynched and did all these horrible things, had a Black man, former slave, come out from behind the cabin with a double barreled and knocked Jim Bob off the horse. And they did it a couple of times. Pretty soon Jim Bob's not coming back. There's a real lesson in that. And yet, so they, Black people were not allowed to own firearms in the South in Reconstruction or after the Civil War under Jim Crow. And the reason why, well, if you fight back, you can light their rockets, or at least make them think about it. At least make them think a second time. I'm into this on all these different books now that are just making great cases for why gun control really legitimately doesn't work. And the one that just stuck out on me, because I just had to go through a background check to get my CCW. Criminals do not obey gun control laws, and criminals by definition don't obey. And gun control laws really only affect some law-abiding stooge like me to go through legal avenues to get firearms. Background checks have no impact on criminals. These people that shoot, some poor innocent guy in the street, or the chances are really good. They've never been background. A vast majority of criminals obtain firearms through other means, including, and I'm reading this one guy says, illegal underground sales, bought, borrowed, traded, or rented from friends or family, purchased by another individual for them, that's a straw buy, theft from their victim or at the scene of the crime. Now, the guy that I'm worried about with a gun isn't, you or somebody with a CCW or somebody that's gone. I'm just, that guy doesn't throw me off, but background checks aren't effective. And this I'm trying to miss my whole week of reading, but if criminals submitted to background checks, they'd get caught. And so why would I do that? Right?
Well, you're from a place similar as I, where there's some pretty tough people on the streets when I grew up. And the person that comes after you, my biggest fear actually is a hammer. That's like the number one murder weapon. But when a dude or a gal comes after you and they've lost their brain, they're temporarily enraged, that's very dangerous.
Oh, yeah, I mean, bar fights and street, that's all real stuff. It's going to happen. But, I don't know. I don't remember anybody's dad that had a handgun unless it was a World War II. They had Lugers, and I forget, one kid I grew up with, his dad had a Luger. And sometimes one of those, said Markovs. They had them. They had that kind of stuff, but they didn't have it for, let's carry this around. They just,
first 10 amendments are your Bill of Rights to protect the individual.
No, exactly.
In America.
But
and I'm a hunter, but before you go hunting, you have to go through a training.
Yeah.
There's rules for hunting, safety rules. Just like you have pistols during those colonial days, they had pistols.
Yeah,
they had rifles.
Sure.
They used they used them to protect themselves, to get food. That's what they were for.
But Jefferson makes it clear that the Second Amendment isn't for deer hunters or squirrel hunters. The Second Amendment is there to protect you from the government. I mean, they had hunting. They knew was a great already. It was a different scenario, but it wasn't to protect. Wasn't so you could whitetail deer hunt. It was protect.
Also, the Declaration of Independence too.
I got to jump, but yes, your answer is yes. We return.
this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
The woman President Donald Trump picked to be the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, opened her confirmation hearing with some strong statements about the deep state and a precise dismantling of the newest Democrat narrative against her. Listen.
You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed.
2 NASA astronauts who have been stuck in space are taking their first spacewalk together, exiting the International Space Station almost 8 months after moving in. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore floated out to perform maintenance work. The pair expected to stay just a week when they arrived at the space station last June. But their brand new ride, Boeing's Starliner capsule, encountered so much trouble that NASA decided to return it empty. That left the 2 test pilots in orbit until they can be brought home.
In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
I do want to come back because, the radio show is fluid. People come and people leave and join and leave and come back and rejoin. And Senate Bill 25003, introduced in the state Senate, it rapidly, my choice of words, makes its way through the process to become law. The second reading was to be Friday, and they chose not to. The bill defines a specified semi-automatic firearm. Now, my question to you as you hear this is why? What ultimately is the purpose? The bill defines a semi-automatic firearm as a semi-automatic rifle. And think about your firearms collection. I'm thinking about what I got. I got 2 things that don't qualify under these laws. They're 2 revolvers. Semi-automatic rifle, those are AKs and SKSs and all the stuff that's in the country, ARs. Semi-automatic rifle or H&K, semi-automatic shotguns, what would that be? With detachable mags or gas-operated semi-automatic handguns with detachable mags. You drop your mag, slap another one in. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, or purchasing a semi-automatic firearm. Think about what you got, what you got in the safe, what you got, under the bed, what you got in the bedstand next to you, what you got in your car, what you got in the glove box, what you got, what's on your hip. All of the above. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, purchasing a specified semi-automatic firearm, except that a person, this is the part that gets nebulous, a person may transfer a specified semi-automatic firearm to an heir. You can't just do that. I'll bet there has to be 2 tons of paperwork to say, I want my grandson to have this shotgun. How old's your grandson? Be first question. But, where'd you get the gun? The semi-automatic firearm to an heir, an individual residing in another state. I won't wait for that one. Or a federally licensed firearm dealer. Well, that's Alan Samuel, Machine Gun Tours. The definitions are extremely broad. Regarding firearms and features to be banned, practically no firearms I'm reading this, are available on the market to satisfy this legislation. So when I started, ginning up the show, and I'm going over, and nobody's, please, it's not my business what you own or don't own. But I went over my own collection of firearms. I'm going, well, that one doesn't. That one doesn't. That one sure as hell doesn't. And I'm down to, I got 2 pistols. I have an ultralight 22 revolver that's really cool. And I have another revolver it's a big one. And other than that, everything that I got, I probably would not be able to go and buy if this passes. You think you're going to go buy, and I have this great Colt 45. It's probably my most favorite, and it's a great firearm, and it is all of the above. It's a semi-automatic, gas-operated handgun with a detachable magazine. Well, so let me read some things that have come in on the wire too. Pete, you could. I heard Dennis. Yes, I've heard Dennis Gallagher do this as well. Give his presentation on the Irish people, including the Crown prohibiting them from arming with swords. No, it's true. Keep away weapons from the mix. I believe we got 2A in the Bill of Rights because the founders knew what the Crown did to opponents. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another one, can I blame impotent Republican Party who will never get out of their own effing way? Republicans need to learn to read the room. In Colorado, the religious traditional Republicans have exited stage left. All right, it's your turn. 303-696-1971. And again, a little bit, we're going to talk about Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs. It's a good-looking Saturday. Stay here. Not again? Better believe it. Saturday, 59 will be the high today, 32 tonight, 61 on Sunday, 66 on Monday. I'm Peter Boyles. This is Radio Free Denver, good old 710 KNUS. And the weather is the weather. It's a beautiful couple of days. We're going to stretch it out. So coming up in the next hour, Maria Sherman's on the show. We'll talk about Sean Diddy Combs. And boy, there is so much being talked about on the internet about, well, will Diddy even survive? Will he turn into Jeffrey Epstein? Will he die in prison? And what the charges really are. But today, and it really has worked out, we have full lines, one line open, I'm sorry. Started reading about this, and I only get to do one day a week. So Senate Bill 25003 has been introduced in the Colorado State House, and it's making its way, as they say, rapidly making its way through the process to become a law. And the second reading was to be yesterday, but they postponed the reading. The bill defines a specified semi-automatic firearm as, and by the way, it's all Democrats, semi-automatic rifle, semi-automatic shotgun, detachable magazine, gas-operated semi-automatic handgun with a detachable mag. The bill prohibits knowingly manufacturing, distributing, transferring, selling, purchasing any of these specified semi-automatic firearms. And they have a couple of these out cards on being able to transfer to an heir or to somebody in another state. But man said to me, so I want to see you do that. But the ban really and again, I'm no legal scholar, but the definitions are really broad regarding firearms and features to be banned, and practically no firearm available on the market can satisfy this legislation. So I went over my collection of firearms, rifles and shotguns and handguns. I went, you know what, Peter? I have two pistols, and they're the only ones that would qualify to get under the wire. So it's 25003, banning manufacture, distribution, transfer, sales, purchase of a specified semi-automatic firearm, which includes, and I'm reading this, semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, along with gas-operated semi-automatic handguns that have detachable ammunition mags. The question I have is, what do you think the purpose of this is? And we've been over gun control and why gun control doesn't work. And so let's just rock and roll and take the calls. Lines are full. We go to Bruce B. Bruce, you're on the radio. Not quite good afternoon, but good morning, and thank you.
It's great to speak with you, Peter.
Well, thank you.
The evil governments wanting to disarm citizens is not a new idea. In the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 19 says, "Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. The Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears." So the evil government wanted to make sure that the people they were putting down didn't have arms. And of course, that was 1,000 years before any guns. So it was swords and spears.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, is it gun control or is it people control?
Yeah, well, in Germany, in the early 20th century, they had a big problem with anarchists and communists shooting up people.
After the First World War, yes.
Yeah, and the people of Germany voted in gun control. And then when Hitler took power and when they passed the Enabling Acts, they actually intensified that so that if a Jew was found with a firearm, they could be executed on the spot. There was no trial.
there was something that happened after the First World War in Germany, and there were. It's interesting. Hitler gave guns. They gave guns to the people that they liked, and there's a really interesting analysis. When an American or a British bomber pilot or fighter pilot, for that matter, would be shot down and would come down in a German field or an Austrian field, the German word is Bauer, and they're farmers. And the Bauers would come out with guns to arrest or to collect the pilots. On the other hand, when a Luftwaffe pilot would be shot down and would parachute into Britain or Scotland, the farmers would come out with pitchforks. No, I'm serious about this. I mean, there's a misnomer in history that they weren't armed. And if they were armed, they were the old guard and the rest of it. And most of those rifles then got thrown into the ocean when the war was over. The British didn't want any.
The NRA ran ads in American magazines.
Oh yeah, if you got one,
asking people to donate rifles and shotguns for the Brits to train with.
That's right.
They were training with broomsticks.
That's right. But when the war ended, most of those weapons, like 99.9% of them, the British government literally threw them into the ocean. But the Germans, and who disarmed Germany was the Americans, the Soviets, and the British. And the vets will tell you that they would come into these villages or into towns, and there were guys, the Germans, they called them Burgermeisters, and there'd be stacked arms. There would be like Mausers and Panzerfausts and all this stuff that was stacked up because the American military or the British military disarmed them. This whole argument of disarmament, after what was called the Nuremberg Acts were passed, you're absolutely right. If a Jew had a gun, but the day-to-day, German, they weren't taking away their guns. And the same thing was true when in Mao's China, when this whole big thing about, Mao's disarming people. He wasn't. He was. If you read, there's a book called Iron Ox, and there's a book called Fan Chen that means turn around in English, and all those books where they went into these rice communes and everything that were but they would find the Japanese military rifle was a 25 caliber. It was a bolt action 25 caliber. They'd find them. They'd find being behind hut walls, and they'd find Japanese 25s, and they'd find some Soviet-made stuff, or they'd find Japanese lap mortars. Mao didn't seem to be worried about because his principle in Red Star, his principal problem that he had was feeding people. His principal problem wasn't Joe McCarthy, or his principal problem wasn't Joseph Stalin. His principal problem was to stay in power by feeding people, and he didn't take their guns. I mean, the armies left. Remember, the Kuomintang goes two places. The first part goes south, and then they become, in the Burma Triangle, they become the heroin guys. The other part of the Kuomintang goes to what was called Formosa, that we now call Taiwan, and that's Chiang Kai-shek. But the people who really seriously write about gun history, will tell you that a lot of things that you think were true weren't true about who had guns and who was allowed to have guns. And now they disarmed people in the occupied, in the Greater Reich. They took away everybody's guns, but not Germans and not Austrians. And so, I mean,
laws for thee, but not for me.
Thank you. But they had strict laws.
Well, all the great genocides of the 20th century were preceded by gun control.
Well,
Armenia,
but remember
Germany.
But remember this: those people were not armed by tradition. Jews in Europe traditionally were not gun owners. The culture was not to have a gun. There were obviously Jewish people that had guns, but like when they started in the Ukraine, building the death camps in Poland, those people were not culturally, traditionally armed. In other words, they didn't disarm the Poles. And then that wasn't the case. They
didn't need to.
That they absolutely did not need to. And that's why, again, the lesson is you never know. And even the master of the Japanese Navy, Yamamoto, had spent time as the military attaché in Washington, D.C., actually played poker with Halsey, and it's a real interesting, they all knew each other. And when he went back, and he told them, he said, there's a gun behind, I think he said every leaf of grass, or
every blade of grass.
Every blade of grass is what he said, blade of grass.
That's what he told the emperor.
Well, I don't think he told the emperor. Nobody told the emperor or anything. I think he probably told Tojo or told, whomever it was. But because he was, I don't want to say he was against Pearl, but he was hesitant because but they knew that if they were going to land like they could in the Philippines or land in China, it was going to be a different boogie. Because these guys were there, and so I mean, seriously, he, and of course, I think it's Halsey that figures out where he is, and they shoot him out of the air. But if you go back and you look at when those guys came down under the Silk and they landed in Scotland or in the High Country in London, and I got to say a special good morning to True this morning. Who really should have flown the Battle of Britain, but they were when the farmers ran out, they came out with pitchforks, and they called them, what did they call them? Mattocks, and they came out and they would arrest on the spot, the Luftwaffe pilot, and they didn't pull guns on them, but when an American went down or a British flyer went down, they came out with guns. So what does that say?
Yeah. Have you ever seen Red Dawn?
Oh yeah,
movie?
Sure. I know the guy who put that film together.
Yeah, we should ask our senators down at the Capitol if they can guarantee that North Korean parachutists aren't going to be coming.
They're not
down.
coming. They're not coming. But in the meantime, it's the other stuff that you fear, and just by your birthright, that Second Amendment that guarantees your right to keep and bear arms, and over time, gun control laws have placed limits on that freedom. I said this earlier. That is the only amendment that you have to ask permission for. You and I don't have to ask permission to sit down here and do a radio show once a week. And you don't have to ask permission to call it. But
yeah,
and
I got my concealed carry permit in 2010. After that incident, there was a couple pulled into like a convenience gas store down on South Broadway early in the morning, and the guy was pumping gas, and his wife went in to use the restroom.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there was a gang of like 4 or 5, guys and a couple gals, and they made some rude comment to the wife. And the guy says, "Hey guys, how about a little respect?" And they proceeded to kick his ass.
Yeah.
And it took the police 22 minutes to get there.
That's the great line.
And passers-by filmed the thing on their phone, but nobody intervened.
Adam points out to me, I thought about it, I was thinking about bringing it up as a topic, that airplane crash in Philadelphia, and you see the guy on fire. And instead of helping him, the guy makes a video. What the? No, I mean, this guy's on fire. And the guy's...
Same thing with the woman in the subway in New York.
What was her... come on. What was her name? Gosh. And she was raped. And they could watch it. And but this guy's on fire running from that wreck. And the guy's making a... Very good call. Really loved it, man. Be safe. Thank you. Have a good weekend. How much time we got here? We got a minute and a half. We got a minute and a half. So I will tell you about, if I tell you about Dan Kaplis, that'll take up part of the minute and a half. Danny's the best lawyer and a good guy. And he helped my family when my family needed help. And Dan Kaplis is the son of a police officer. We've talked about it. He has been the premier man, and I had him in my corner, and my family did. Danny's believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases, believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Avalanche. He's serious firm for serious cases and accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. He represents good people like you, and he all walks of life without the ability to pay. And if you need Danny's help, and if you do, you 303-770-5551 or hit dankaplislaw.com. It's Kaplis, Kaplis.com. Hold on your hats, lines are full. Talk about Diddy coming up. Saturday morning, February 1, 2025. I'm Peter Boyles, and this is 710 KNUS Denver's talk station. 59 the high, 61 Sunday, and Monday, 66 degrees. Coming up, Maria Sherman about Diddy. And how many times you've had a conversation, do you think Diddy will make it, just to make it to court? I mean, given what happened to Jeffrey and given what is happening all the time now, they don't, and I guess in Diddy's case, they have all kinds of video and, far more stuff than they did with Jeffrey Epstein. So morning, everybody. Glad you're all here. We're talking about guns and gun control and the introduction of the Senate Bill 25003 by the Democrats. And it just covers the waterfront, taking people out. Back to the phones with full lines. This is Arnie. Arnie, you're on a radio show. Thank you, man. Good morning.
Hey, Peter, a quick visit to the past. You may or may not remember me, but my son and I, we went to your shooting classes years ago.
Sure, of course, I remember you. Yes.
And I think we took the CCA course.
Yes,
with,
we did.
Rick Wyatt
yes,
back in the day.
Back before. But
yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, an up-to-date part of that is my son, who's now 32.
Jeez.
He got tired of the crazy politics in Colorado, and he pulled up stakes and moved to Montana. So that's where he is now.
Yeah.
And goes hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff all the time.
Good for him.
The question that I had, and I don't know whether it's because I'm a pretty, when it comes to rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff, I'm a pretty much a black and white person. And what I want to know is, why do these states continue to pass laws restricting gun rights when one of the most onerous gun laws, the Sullivan Law in New York, got thrown out by the Supreme Court?
Sullivan.
I don't understand why what is it that promotes them the ability to continue to pass these when they'll be challenged?
Yeah, if you've noticed, I've tried to tag about every third call with what's the end game? What do they want? What's the end game? What do they want? What's the end game? And the Sullivan Act, by the way, they grabbed Al Capone on the Sullivan Act, but Al did his big federal time on taxes. But gun control is an umbrella term that refers to laws and ordinances that restrict how law-abiding citizens, your boy, can buy, own, or use firearms. Now, it is the only amendment, here I go again, drop the needle, but it is the only amendment to the Constitution that you must ask permission for. You don't have to ask permission to call the radio show and express your views. I don't need, although, you can be sued, slander and libel, and that's 1000% correct to do that. You can't ruin people's lives. But to give your opinion on the right to keep and bear arms, you don't have to ask anybody to express that, do you?
No.
No.
Here's because the question that you're asking, what's the long-term objective?
Yeah.
And I think I know what the long-term objective is.
What are it?
And I relate it to an example somebody gave me a long time ago in a class, and it had to do with the way things break apart and fall apart. And the example he used was the day that a brand new, and back in that day it was a 747. The day that the brand new 747 was rolled out of the hangar after being put together, it starts to deteriorate. And within 25 years or less or more, a few more, it's put to the boneyard because it's no longer valid. And I believe in my own mind that that's the way societies are, and that's the way the Constitution is. That over time, it continues to deteriorate by trying to pass laws against things because it was meant to restrict government.
But remember, the framers were bright enough to know that they wanted it to be adaptable. They wanted it to be, I mean, the rock rib Bill of Rights, but the Constitution, you know, look, we've added, and it failed, the Volstead Act, that was prohibition, but also, you know, voting rights. And the Constitution is a living, if you listen to a good constitutionalist speak, it's a living, breathing thing that it can adapt, it can change. That's why it's there. But, you know, when you hear people talk about because of technology, take what you and I are doing right now. This is just an addendum of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So the First Amendment then was town square or town hall and newspapers. Now we have everything that we have, including what you and I are doing right now. First Amendment still applies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so ultimately you believe what?
Ultimately, I believe that the United States, and I don't know what time it would be or how far down the road, I believe it will become a totalitarian state, just like others that exist now or existed in the past. Because as you like to say a lot of times, is that all empires fail.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. And so at some time, even though we may not border right on the definition of an empire, we kind of are.
We are. We're not kind of are. We are. This is an empire.
And so eventually it's going to fail, and it will fail because the people like the people in the Colorado State House that are all wacko Democrats will eventually, they'll be able to pass anything they want.
Well, it isn't just this, but it's a series of things. If you read Gibbon, who's the classic on empires failing the Roman Empire, he has all of these stops where things happen. Yeah. And every one of them, but there's principal things like, you know, wars that have no end. They go into all the different things that the Romans did to ultimately let them. And by the time the Visigoths get there, and by the time the barbarians, quote, sack Rome, Rome has already been already destroyed. It's already destroyed itself, and the end is already there before the Vandals get there and all those different barbaric tribes. And so it's nothing new to see the barbaric tribes show up here. I mean, that's right. It's part of the model. And I'm a great believer that history is this very stern taskmaster. Now, outcomes don't have to be, but at the same time, they always have been. And so watching all of this happen, knowing to myself that, Peter, this has all happened before. It's happened in other places in the world, but it's happened. And the last empire that failed that we're aware of is the Soviet Empire. It failed.
Yeah. And look what's risen out of it.
Always.
And I think that I believe that the same kind of thing will happen here, although a lot of people wouldn't believe it. But if we didn't think for a minute that we could have totalitarian government and troops that would suppress the population, if they can get the guns away from, I mean, eventually,
well,
their goal is to not have any more guns. Now, Colorado is surrounded by states that wouldn't agree with that, but it's only a matter of time.
The Marxists, and if you read the modern day, not Karl Marx or Trotsky or the rest of the original Marxists, but the modern day Marxists knew that controlling and destroying the family was really an important step. And because the family was always the place where things were some lunatic guy sitting on the edge. I mean, I really devour history, and I'm just finishing it's called America First, and it's about the battle between Charles Lindbergh and FDR about American foreign policy after, prior to the beginning of the Second World War. We're doing that right now. We're fighting that fight again. The gunfight has really, after Jack Kennedy was murdered, and with a mail order rifle, gun control began. Everything has a tipping point. But if you read places like about Japan, the Japanese didn't have firearms. The worrisome when they built this military that was going to protect them, and so they were armed. When you see things that way, like we were talking about, the old guard guarded the beaches.
Yeah.
Now the farmers didn't have guns. The everyday Briton didn't have a gun, but these guys, and they were, they kept the guns in bunkers, and they'd pick up the gun when it was their turn to walk the beach. But the history of who can have guns is a really great history of freedom and lack of freedom. So,
well, I think we're the only country in the world in which the right to buy and have, and
the Swiss
kinds of stuff
the Swiss do. The Swiss have it. You can have your own gun in Switzerland. There's places in the world that that owning a gun isn't a crime. But,
right.
But I remember being on the train and seeing a guy on a we used to call them 10-speed bikes, on a bike, and he's got a rifle on his back and he's pedaling somewhere. And of course, they all have the great standing militia stuff, but they can have guns. They buy and sell guns. The Canadians, I think, do. I think there's still places, but it's a significant choke point in whether or not you're going to turn the corner.
Yeah.
Love the call. A good call.
Yep.
Thank you so much. How's our time doing? 2.5 minutes. We're going to Jack in Wyoming. Jackie, you're on the show. I got 2.5 minutes.
Good topic, Pete. Listen, they have laws, and they can never write a law that somebody can't figure out a way around. A perfect example of that would be the 1858 New Army revolver, which was a black powder gun, and the two Italian companies have manufactured those, and people like Cabela's have been selling them. And I bought one years and years and years ago. But black powder's a nuisance because you have to spend an hour cleaning it after you shoot it.
And get around it to see where you shot.
Yeah, that's right. You got to step out of a cloud of smoke to see if you hit anything. Okay, some genius came up with a replacement cylinder that handles center fire cartridges in Colt 45. And I've got one, and it shoots just beautifully. But the problem is the gun's still exempted from all the regulations because technically it's a reproduction of an 1858 handgun. But the damn thing is probably just as good as my Colt 357 Trooper. I mean, it's totally modernized by changing that cylinder.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful gun to shoot. And I've got a 10-inch barrel on it. Boy, it's like a Ned Buntline gun. But it's not black powder anymore, and it's cartridge, center fire cartridge.
Wyatt Earp.
So there's always a way around it, Pete.
My grandma always said locks, L-O-C-K-S. Locks
are for criminals.
Are made for honest people.
For the honest people. Yeah, that's right.
A lock
doesn't do anything for criminals.
No. And background checks you don't mean jack to some street criminal.
But I carry this gun with me whenever I feel like I need to have a gun in the car. And I don't really think if I got stopped, they could ever say anything about it because it's exempted because of the age of it. The fact that it's
in Wyoming. Do you have anything like a CCW? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, they have them up here, but I live in Evergreen. I'm only up here with my business. My office is up here. Okay. You can't run a business in the state of Colorado if you own trucks. If you own trucks, you got to get the hell out of Colorado. I mean, that's the bottom line.
We're breaking. Love you. Thanks. Everybody hang on. Open lines continue. And then Maria Sherman on Sean Diddy Combs. Wondering what the overs and unders are on whether or not Diddy ever comes out of jail or comes out alive. Stay here. Saturday, everyone, the first morning of February 2025, and it's going to be 59, 61 tomorrow, and 66 on Monday. Coming up, Maria Sherman on Sean Diddy Combs. We're talking about Senate Bill 2503, from the Democrats in the House on really just taking away guns. Let's go here. We go to Jim. Hey, Jim, thanks, man. You're on the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
Morning, sir.
Listen, I just want to say, if you think about the Caribbean, they don't allow guns there, or it's Latin America, but the cartels seem to be well armed.
Yeah, they don't seem to have a problem, do they?
Yeah, it seems like they're well armed, and so I guess when you disarm the citizenry, the only people that seem to have no problem getting guns are the criminals. And so I just wonder if the Democrats are they're okay with the criminals having the guns, but the citizens are not.
No, we've talked about it, and thank you for your call. But it's the truth. It's background checks aren't effective. I mean, having just been through it for a CCW, but if criminals submit to background checks, well, they're going to get caught. So why would they go and do it?
Well, they think in their logic, by taking away guns, they'll have less gun violence, but criminals have other ways of killing people. I think we've seen that it happened in England. A jihadist killed people with a knife, right? Went on a rampage that way. So, I just think the Democrats are very short-sighted in these things. But it goes with their course of government controlling every part of our life.
Well, it makes there's something called the moral high ground,
right?
And seizing the moral high ground throughout history is, and in some way, Adolf Hitler seizes the moral high ground in Germany. And he is the way out. He's the guy that's telling you the truth. He's going to fix it. He is seizing the moral high ground. Gun control doesn't work. Criminals don't obey gun control laws. Criminals, by definition, don't obey the law. Gun control laws only affect law-abiding people who go through legal avenues. I just went through this to obtain. Now, I already had the guns. But stupido, my CCW ran out. Well, my mother raised a lot of really ugly kids, but I don't want to be out there packing and not have a CCW. Criminals, by definition, don't obey the law. Gun control laws, that's background checks have no impact on criminals because they're not going to go get one. I've been through it bunches of times, background checks, but I just went through it. Denver, you get on to Denver PD and you got your certificates and you got your money and you got all your stuff and you got to make an appointment on the internet. And then you walk in and you get shook down and then you go back and they roll your fingers and they take your picture and all this other stuff. Okay, fine. Now, if some guy's got a couple of priors, especially felonies, do you really think he's going to go in there and do that?
No,
of course.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah. It's the same thing with this government when they were requiring, people were getting fired because they didn't have the COVID shot, right?
Yeah.
That was going on. We've seen the extreme, what the government can do in extreme of, controlling your life. Yeah. Just that alone should scare the heck out of everybody of what they can do.
I'm back to, I was mentioning, I'm reading part-time reading Nietzsche. And Nietzsche said, everything the government says, assume is a lie. Everything the government has, it's taken from somebody else.
Right.
That's pretty powerful stuff. And when you think about it, when I read it, and I had to go rethink it and think, well, is Freddie Nietzsche right? And I'm going, Fred, I think you're onto something here.
Well, what did Ronald Reagan say? I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yeah, that's the worst words you can hear. I'm from 60 Minutes. I'm from 60 Minutes when you walk into work. But if criminals did submit to background checks, and we've seen that these checks aren't effective at stopping those who intend to use guns to commit crime. I mean, criminals are not. Look, if you got a couple of priors, are you really going to go and ask permission to go to carry a gun? No, they're waiting for you. No. Especially if there's a want on you, they're really going to get you. No, I mean the whole thing's it's all absurd. But keep an eye on what they're going to do this week and next week with this, and they may kill it and spike it, and and we'll see. But at the same time, it doesn't mean they're not intending to try again.
Well, I think if Polis is wanting to run for president, I think he'll have to spike it.
Of course he will.
So that is our saving grace.
Yeah, I mean, I to me, this is an intent, and I'm always amazed at how these guys see the world, and they actually, I guess, they sit around in a circle somewhere, and they believe, they drink their own Kool-Aid. They believe this stuff, and if you looked at it, if you went down to ground level, remember, I mean, Klebold and Harris got their guns illegally.
Right.
End of story.
Right. I agree. I just the government, what we've got going on is just all overpowering, and it just scares the heck out of me of what they can do. We've seen it. We've seen what they can do. They control social media. They control your job. We've seen what has happened. So the less government there is, the better off a citizen we are.
I mean, the question we would ask ourselves is, does gun control reduce crime? The overwhelming evidence says no, it doesn't. So then why are they trying to do it? Because it does. Is it not gun control, rather people control?
I agree. I think it's people control. And they feel that if they control all the people, then and they get the guns, then there'll be less violence. They just don't think about the illegal. The person that is not going through the process doesn't give a damn, and they will just get the gun illegally, right?
The cities with the strictest gun control have the highest gun crime rates. Why is that?
Yeah, Chicago is a great example.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I mean, New York. I mean,
right.
You got guns. Thank you for your call. Thank you very much. Let's see. We go to Al in Littleton. Al, thank you. Good morning. Still good morning. Good morning. You're on the show.
Hi, Pete. Hey. I'm not calling about the major topic today, but I wanted to let you know that I had heard your interview with Pete Early a few weeks ago, the author who writes about the prison system.
Yep.
And I had said that I had mentioned to my wife that I was really interested in that. So she bought his book, No Human Contact.
Yes.
And I just finished it, and I just wanted to let you know, wow, what a book.
That's chilling. That book, he wrote a book called Hot House, HOT, Hot House. He worked for a year inside of Leavenworth. He worked in a big casino. He wrote a book about working in a big casino. He's a really, really, really remarkable writer.
Yeah. I was very impressed. His writing is great. The story about the two main characters, Silverstein and Clay, I forget his name, is just it's chilling about what happens, particularly in the federal penitentiaries, but in most prisons, it's unbelievable. And I would encourage anyone who has an interest in that to read this book and read his other books, because they're excellent.
Thank you for the plus, because he's coming back on. I think we got him on again next month. Read the book about his son. His son is schizophrenic, and read about his
Oh,
son.
right.
Yeah.
I will.
I'm going
I
to
will.
jump.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Coming right back. Hold on. 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Kash Patel, President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the FBI, exposed the actions of the agency leaders that led to losing the trust of the public and vowed to rid the FBI of corruption and political influence, all while backing the blue and restoring transparency. Watch.
Of America. And I'm going to let good cops be cops and put handcuffs on the bad guys and put child molesters in prison and put murderers in prison and make sure CCP fentanyl doesn't kill another one of your constituents. That only 40% of Americans have trust and faith in the FBI. It is a cataclysmic failure in leadership to get to that point that did not happen over time. And so what the FBI must do is work with Congress to expose any government corruption, provide government accountability through transparency.
President Donald Trump has said he will follow through with his vow to hit imports from Canada and Mexico with 25% tariffs this Saturday.
For a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
Good afternoon, everyone, on a Saturday, February 1. On a Saturday, 59 will be the high. 51 on Sunday, Monday, 66 degrees. Got my motorcycle parked outside. We're going to change horses.
With the Me Too movement, there was maybe not an assumption, but a hope that these allegations come to light. And seeing Harvey Weinstein on screen, if you're watching the Cosby Show, you're interacting with Bill Cosby.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
And that distinction is really key, I think, for the viewer's experience. I think even with Combs and maybe to bring back R. Kelly, because that also might be fresh in people's minds.
Indeed.
R. Kelly is currently serving a 30-year sentence. With R. Kelly, for some listeners, there was this experience of like, well, I'm not going to listen to confessions anymore because look at all of these allegations. Now he's serving time for these crimes. There's that aspect of it, but with Combs, because he's became so much more of like a behind the scenes, larger than life industry figure, you can listen to, or maybe there isn't the same sort of feeling that like I can't listen to this record because he produced it or he released it on Bad Boy Records, or I'm going to continue to watch Revolt TV or drink his vodka brand or whatever it may be. Because there's that sort of distance of it, him not being the face of it. And that's been a really interesting conversation I've had with people because, it allows the listener to make that choice. If he's not the face of it, then why would I stop enjoying it, I suppose is the thought.
Did Howard University, I think I read your piece, Howard rescinded some honorariums that they had awarded?
I believe so. I did hear that. That was, I believe that was at some point last year. And I would need to see the status of that now. I'm not totally sure because there have been some moves like that. And some of them have been a little bit more opaque than others. I'm curious also about how streaming plays into this. Has Diddy's music been removed from streaming? No. Has it been removed from playlists? Maybe not, but isn't being promoted in the same way. So there's this sort of distancing that's happened that we've seen. But I think while this is ongoing, and the trial isn't going to start until May, there will be some moves like that, but maybe nothing, not larger ones, perhaps.
What happens? I mean, this trial is coming, and all the talk on the internet in particular is that there are videos and there's testimony and there's underage kids, and I mean the list of crimes is staggering. What conceivably can happen to him?
It depends on. I mean, it's impossible to predict. It's based on where these lawsuits go, and there are a number of lawsuits. We're of course mostly discussing the September 2024 indictment because that's the one that led to him being held in that detention center. But in the months and weeks since, there have been additional accusations. If you might remember a headline from October where an attorney alleged that Diddy had been accused of sexual misconduct by 120 people.
Yes.
There are, lawsuits alleging sexual assault of 10 and 17-year-old boys.
Yes.
So it's ongoing. It's all dependent on what happens in the courtroom, of course. And yeah, it's impossible to predict. I wouldn't be doing you any favors if I did that.
All right.
But I can tell you, it has been interesting too to see how the sort of hip hop community has reacted in some ways. Whenever there's an instance of a power player being accused of crimes, you start to see people become a little bit of like online detectives and sort of searching for clues. I spoke to people who were kind of astonished by the amount of people who were going through his old raps to see if there was anything sort of signaling any of these allegations. I think that's behavior we've seen since R. Kelly. People are trying to find maybe confessions buried deep within the actual music. And then, of course, I think with the Sean Diddy Combs case in particular, there's an aspect of it where because there are women and men, boys and girls alleged in these lawsuits, a lot of conversation about supposed queerness and homosexuality has kind of distracted from conversation of the abuses. At least that's what a professor at University of Virginia was telling me. So that too has been kind of interesting. I think we're going to see whatever happens in the litigation. Of course, that'll determine a lot. That determines his future for sure. But there's also these conversations of how people experience Combs's music and legacy from here on out. There's a lot that has been colored, and I think it's just going to lead the conversation for the rest of his life.
Do you believe that those party tapes exist?
I can't voice an opinion on that, but I can tell you that I think I get the sense from the public and from some of the voices I've spoken to that because of the Cassie video from that was released in last spring, that there very well could be more supposed video evidence. I think, and in that video too, I think was a sort of key turning point in a lot of the public discourse as well, where it no longer felt, or the perception was no longer that these are sort of nebulous allegations, but here was something that felt maybe more evidential because it was, hotel hallway footage.
Oh man, I saw that many times. That was horrible. So what is to come? And Maria, when is his trial date set?
It's in early May 2025. I believe it's May 7th.
There won't be, there'll be 1 or 2 cameras there.
Yes. And I will say that this is, I can only anticipate that this will be a very long trial given the scope of the indictment and the lawsuits. So it'll be sort of interesting to see what happens. And again, what the conversation becomes. I am thinking about it musically. There have been some examples with like R. Kelly where of course he's serving time, but there have been many instances of multiple allegations of sexual assault and domestic violence that haven't resulted in a sentencing. I think, last week Marilyn Manson wasn't charged after a years-long investigation.
Saw that.
So there are no guarantees and no assumptions to be made. All we can do is continue to follow the case.
Next time we talk, I spent about an hour talking to Marilyn Manson at the Ozzfest, and way before any of this stuff happened. And I came away and I said, that is one really, 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 really smart man. And look at this. And it is what I guess we end with this. First of all, your work is great. Maria Christina Sherman, you can look at her on the internet and read her work, but she does just a whale of a job. Thank you, ma'am. Have a really great weekend. I know you're working. I hope we meet and talk again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It was great. We're back in open lines. Stay here. Now I get to say it. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, everyone. It is Feb 1, Saturday, 2025. Motorcycle Expo's in town. It's right time. Waiting for the boys. We'll cruise. It is Saturday, 59 the high, 61 on Sunday, 66 on Monday. Back here next Saturday. Text message. Boyles at the Ozzfest. Photos. They were effing fun. Talk more about Ozzfest. I've been to a few. It goes on and on and on. So my experience at the Ozzfest. So Barry Fay and what's Ozzy's wife's name? Sharon. They're the ones that really put it on. Ozzy, I don't think he's in contact, but so they did it at Old Mile High Stadium, and Billy Thorpe went with me. Billy was my producer, and Billy's brother. And Billy's brother, I think, was in high school, maybe even junior high. Then my children, Shannon and Morgan, and I know Morgan was middle school, perhaps, and my daughter was in high school. And she worked in the summer. She worked for Faye. So it's in a book that he wrote, a book entitled Backstage Past, P-A-S-T. So we had this relationship as a friend, and so he got everybody backstage passes. Obviously, he was the man. He could do that. He was the promoter. So we were at Old Mile High, not at the new stadium, but Old Mile High, and it was my kids and Billy and Billy's younger brother. And it was it took them, I don't know, maybe 2 days to set it up. So it was at the height of the Ramseys. And I remember, what was that guy? Those guys that wore masks. Was it Slayer? Is that who they were? Slipknot. Thank you. Slipknot. See, man, working with Adam. And Ozzy and let's see, the big act, of course, was Ozzy. And so there's too many things not to talk about, and so we get there, and I'm trying to think who the band that was on, but when they were done, the guy that died, they called him Dimebag, is who they called him. And he had ripped and he gave a set of drumsticks to my son, who I think he still has them. So Faye said, because the John Bonet story was the story in the country. So I go, and he says, come with me. I want you to go and meet Ozzy. Not Ozzy. I did meet Ozzy for the same reason. He said, I want you to meet Marilyn Manson. And I really wasn't aware of who Pantera. Thanks, Gabe. Pantera. And I wasn't really aware of, the impact that this guy had. If you remember, all the preachers came and they stood out around they were praying. These evangelicals were praying because of the acts that were working the Ozzfest. And I later made the comment, I said, well, nobody ran through downtown and lit garbage cans on fire and turned cars over like they did when the Broncos won. I said, these are just, but I didn't have a gag joke that I said, if they dropped a blockbuster bomb on Mile High Stadium, they probably would have caught 2 or 3 generations of felons. I mean, it was just like, it was such a montage, a collage of people. So they had it all, backed up. Nobody could get back there. And I meet this guy. His name's Brian. And he's who he is, man. And now, of course, all the stories are out. But he's Marilyn Manson. And they took the names of serial killers and sexy women, like Twiggy Ramirez. I had a handshake with Twiggy Ramirez. And who were the other guys? I forget the other guys. But Marilyn was Marilyn Monroe and Charlie Manson. And Twiggy was Twiggy, and then Richard Ramirez, the hillside stalker. But they all had these names, and my kids were on to all of it. And so there was a picnic table, and of course they cater all this stuff, good food. So I sit down with this guy. He's brilliant. I mean, his father was a minister, and he's doing pro wrestling. He's doing, everything in the world that he puts together for this act. And it's called Marilyn Manson. So I sit back, and we're at this picnic table, and he knew, and he was smart. And he had, I can't think of her name, was the woman that was the tattooed, what was her name? She was really hot, but she was like totally inked out. She had black hair. I can't think of that either, but she was with him. She was his girlfriend at the time, I guess. And so she sat with us and didn't say anything, just kind of sat there and listened. And at the end of, I don't know, had to be an hour. So he said, I got to go to work, and not in those words, he got to go to work. And so he gets up and I get up, we shake hands. And so Faye says, come on, let's go out and watch the Open. And so Faye said, I had a backstage pass, and it was one of those things they ink it to your leg. It has sticky on it, and you put it on your leg. That's the cool thing to do. And he said, keep your hand on your pass, because people will try and steal your pass when you walk through the crowd, and they'll stick it on themselves, and they're going to be back here. So we went out to the sound guys, where the sound guys were. And they pulled the curtain back, and there's the guy I was just talking to, and he's crucified. They got him on a cross. He's crucified, and he does this whole Marilyn Manson act. So then Faye said, Ozzy wants to meet you. Ozzy wants to know about the what happened in Boulder. So they were using the visiting team's locker room, because they had it backed up. That's the stage was there. So he said, come on, let's go. So I took my daughter with me, and who's Ozzy's daughter? I can't think of her name either. Say it. Kelly. And she's in this squared away place that they got, and Ozzy's on the Stairmaster. And he's, pumping the arms, pumping his legs, and he's watching National Geographic. The television's like up where he's working. So Faye says, hey, Oz, this is the guy I told you about. Well, I can't tell you the things that he said because I wouldn't be here next Saturday. But everything began with the letter F. And we sat and we talked for, I don't know, half an hour, 35 minutes. And compare Ozzy to Marilyn Manson was like day and night. Marilyn Manson was night, and I think so. You figure Ozzy's the veteran of what, 2,000 acid trips, and then snorting ants. I mean, you got to figure, biting bats. That was it. He was biting bats, but he snorted ants. They talked about him snorting ants and all these crazy things that he did. So I figured, well, he's just a veteran of all these acid trips, and this guy Marilyn. I thought, man, you're like. Long story short, it was just a hell of an experience, and Faye writes about they had this place called Ozland, or they named it after the Wizard of Oz because he's Ozzy. Where were they all trying to get to? What the city, not Crystal City, Emerald City. So they named this whole merchandise place Emerald City off of Oz, naming Oz. So Faye and I are walking through it. Once again, I mean, it's like you can't make it up. And I see this woman coming at us, and she had a skirt that went all the way down. And then I thought she had like this brown top on. Well, turned out she was body painted. She didn't have any clothes on. She was like from the waist up, she didn't have any clothes on. She was body painted, and she was Skippy. I mean, she was on another planet, and she said, "Aren't you Barry Fay?" And I'm going, "Oh, now it's going to get good." And Fay said yes, and she said, "I have something for Ozzy." And I'm watching, and she reaches in her purse and she pulls out, I'm telling you, a vial of blood. I don't know if it's her blood, almost doesn't matter, but the vial of blood. And she gave it to Fay, and Fay dropped it. I don't know if he did it intentionally or just did it, and the blood broke. But he writes something different about it in that book, Backstage Past. He writes something else what he and I and Ozzy did with the blood, but that wasn't true. And that was like, I just thought it was cool as hell. I thought I had a really good time. Somebody wants to talk about it. Hey, James and Sterling, good afternoon, man. You're on the show.
Good afternoon. I did make it to one Ozzfest. So I left the farm and went to Ozzfest. And man, I can't tell you what a good time it was. And me and my friend, I didn't smoke. I'm 22 years old, but the amount of people smoking, to try to make a funny here, smoking the pot, whatever. I got my friend that I was with. He's like, "Man, you're getting a little twisted here." I'm like, "Yeah, but that was a good time." Those guys put on a show because you take a kid off the farm. I mean, I listened to the music in a tractor, but then again, to go watch that Ozzfest was just insanely cool.
Which one did you go to? Where was it held?
I don't remember. I'm 48 years old now, so I was 22 when I went.
You blacked it. No, I went. It was at Old Mile High Stadium, and I used to go with Faye to quote concerts. I went to see Billy Joel with him. I went to see all that kind of stuff, YouTube, and as long as you just stay with him, and he would he was who he was. He you had to know him, and I know
but they were true and honest people. I mean, you got to meet them the way I did and never get to. Us as a crowd. That's what I'm asking. Were they true and honest people, just like good down? Could you have a conversation with them like you could anybody else?
I mean, I legitimately talked to Marilyn Manson for an hour, and I didn't have of course, I didn't know any of the stuff that later comes out about his life and what he was doing, but I was trying to. Pardon me.
Yeah, but I mean, you could have a civil conversation with the people.
I got to tell you something for real, James. Smart. I can't say that for Ozzy because the conversation I had with Ozzy was bizarre. But then, as my daughters pointed out, Dad, how many acid trips do you think that Ozzy took? And remember, he was biting, he was snorting ants and biting bats and chickens and stuff, But he was, I can't say he wasn't cordial. He was just who he was, and the whole experience was A+. I mean, and then later when all the stuff started leaking out about not Ozzy Party, but about Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
Woo. What was her name? What was that? What was her? I'm asking Adam. Dita Von Teese. Thank you. Adam's always on the job.
Von Teese.
But it was a made up.
You mean a kid? He's sharp.
It was a made up name too. She was really, Betty Lou, whoever she was, but she just sat at the picnic table with us, and he had a guy that
Alice Cooper was never there, was he? No.
I met Alice Cooper.
I like Alice. I seen Alice Cooper, his interview, and he's a totally different. I admire that guy.
Alice Cooper did the radio show when he opened up Cooperstown. He had a bar here called Cooperstown, and he came in and did the show. His folks were missionaries to the Apache tribe.
That's interesting.
And he's a Christian guy. He talks, and I thought the world of him. I thought he was just really a a force. And when the Marilyn
But
Manson,
it's civil, but he was level-headed.
he was
Cooper,
great.
From that interview, he
Great.
wasn't the person
No,
that
no,
he was.
no.
He was just one of us type of people.
But there's the best example I can give everybody is pro wrestling. The guy you see in the ring is not the guy that you go drinking beer with, although some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. They do the job, they do what and then, I mean, I've seen it in this business, and the same guy on the air, the same guy off the air, he's got a chance at making it. But the guys off the air who are different than they are on the air, it just doesn't work. So, but I've seen.
I could see that, but that's part of their profession. Like, I mean, you're on the radio business, so you totally understand that better than me being a farmer. You totally get that concept more than I do.
But it's part of what we do. And certainly I thought Marilyn Manson got it, but I think he might have been living the part too. Thank you so much. We're going to turn around, come back. We're talking about gun control earlier, but now it's open lines. 303-696-1971. Good afternoon, 59, everybody. Stay here.
This hour, I'm Christina Ohio in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
Two of the youngest victims of the deadly Washington, D.C. airplane crash have been identified as Angela Yang and Sean Kay, a duo that has been described as an up-and-coming youth ice skating team with a bright future. Yang and Kay were on the flight back from the U.S. Figure Skating Championships and National Development Camp in Wichita, Kansas with their coach when it crashed into an Army helicopter on Wednesday night. This video has surfaced of the pair's final performance as they won first place in several categories in the 2025 Midwestern Sectional Singles and U.S. Ice Dance in Plano, Texas in November. Yang was inspired to get into the sport by her siblings who play hockey, and Kay got into ice dance with his brother. U.S. Figure Skating confirmed that several skaters, coaches, and their family members were on board the flight, including a pair of teenage figure skaters, their mothers, and two highly regarded Russian figure skating coaches. The chief executive at the Skating Club of Boston said that skaters Jenna Hahn and Spencer Lane were among those killed, along with coaches Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov. U.S. Figure Skating previously confirmed that several skaters, coaches, and family members were on the commercial flight after attending a development camp that followed the national championships, which wrapped up Sunday in Kansas.
Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Ohio, Salem News Channel.
Good afternoon. I get to say it now. It is Saturday, February 1, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS 59. We're getting ready to go motorcycling. 61 Sunday, and on Monday, 66 degrees. The ski resorts are experiencing better snow conditions now than forever. Perfect time to consider taking your skis and snowboarding for a tune, maybe even getting new gear for Christmas. If you didn't get new gear for Christmas, I should have said that. The best winter sports equipment, head over to Larson Ski and Sport, located south of I-70 on Kipling. John Marriott, his son Jack, Paul, all these guys have become friends. I've represented John now for 20 years at minimum. The convenience of Larson's is unbeatable. Perfect stop on your way up or down the mountain. You find them, large wooden building, just south of I-70 on Kipling. So if you're going westbound on I-70, head in the mountain, get off on the Kipling exit, drop down. There's a tunnel. So you come down the ramp, stay on your left side, under I-70, then quickly look to your right. Look west. You see a big wooden building, Larson Ski and Sport. Coming down the other way, get off on the Kipling exit, coming eastbound on 70, turn, there you are. The guys are right there. 7 days a week, John and the guys at Larson's, absolutely the experts on boots and poles and skis and one pieces and two pieces and helmets and warm gloves and you name it and claim it, racks for the top of your cars or trucks. These are the guys. They've been doing it for so long. The website is Larson Sport, LARSON Sport.com, 303-423-0654. We go to the phones. This is Dana. Dana, you're on a radio show, man. Good morning. Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, Peter, you're a student of history and wondered if you had seen the series on PBS called Secrets of the Dead.
Tell me what the themes are, and I'll tell you, sometimes I get it and sometimes. So tell what's it about?
It's excellent. Like they do a wide range of subjects. Like 2 weeks ago, they talked about how the German soldiers were given amphetamine.
Oh yeah, sure. I know the show, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And last week they did one on bombing Auschwitz, whether or not the Allies should bomb it or not.
I've seen those shows. I mean, yeah. They and that was always the rap after the war that Roosevelt knew.
Yeah, I mean that was a tough decision to try to make. You know, whether or not to kill the innocent Jews that were there, to put a stop to it once and for all. But yeah, and then the bombing back then was not as accurate as today. So heck, you could bomb something and it might hit something a mile away.
Well, going back to the first one, methamphetamine or a product similar to methamphetamine, is that the series that you saw that's why the Polish invasion only lasted 3 days and everybody conked. They couldn't take it any further. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and then the British found out about it, and so they gave their soldiers amphetamine when they were in North Africa, which led to disastrous results because they became overconfident, and the Germans wiped them out.
Remember that Hitler had, I'm trying to think of his personal physician's name, but he gave him shots. He was shooting meth. The Kennedys were shooting that stuff. They had the Dr. Feelgood, Dr. Morell was Hitler's guy, and they think in the last year or so of his life, they had turned him into a junkie, and he was so out of it on drugs. But the Rommel and those guys in North Africa, they were shooting it up. The invasion of Poland, they were using it, and they got 3 days. They could have, I don't know if they could have gotten further or as far as they got, but then the drugs ran out on them. And I think at the Bulge, they loaded up the Wehrmacht with drugs.
The most interesting one I saw in that series was about the Antikythera device. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
That was fascinating. It was in 1902. Some Greek divers that were diving for sponges found this ancient Greek shipwreck at the bottom of the ocean, and there's a device they found on there. It turns out it was made by Archimedes, and it was considered the world's first computer because it could plot the trajectories of the planets.
I mean, when it's such a joy to read history, and particularly to discover what you once thought was straight. And I'll tell you something to read. When Kevin Flynn and Gary Gerhardt wrote their book called The Silent Brotherhood, and it was about the men who killed Alan Berg, I chose not to read that book when it came out. I didn't want anything to do with the book. So Kevin takes me to the film to see the movie The Order. They have now renamed Kevin's book The Order. I bought a copy of it, and I literally can't put it down. It's everything that's going on in Denver, everything that's going on with them, but I didn't know, or I thought differently. I thought that what I thought was real wasn't. And I wrote a piece for the Denver Post that was the truth about how and why he was murdered. And it never was part of Kevin's book because they were more focused on the killers themselves and who they were. But it's that look into their lives that I never cared to do because my hatred was so great. And now as an old man, I wanted to read it. And it was who Bob Matthews was and David Lane and all of those guys who took his life. And it's a brilliant book. If you see it, now it's under the name of The Order. I wasn't crazy about the movie. I didn't think the movie about killing Alan, I don't think that part of it was remotely in the ballpark. But the rest of the stuff about who these guys were, and I thought many, why didn't I read this book before? Because I was so disgusted by them, and I'd seen them in courtrooms on 3 occasions as a witness, and in the movie they looked nothing like anything. They were like the guy that played Bob Matthews looked like Bob Matthews. The rest of them, I knew what they looked like, and they didn't look like that. And they twisted and turned it to make it the picture they wanted to make it. But your point is, the truth is always so deceptive, and whose version of the truth. Wow.
Well, I just wanted to see if you had seen that, and it comes on Wednesday night at 9:00 on Channel 6, and next week they're going to do King Arthur.
Whoa. Well, I will be there. I think that I know that the whole meth thing comes out of the German labs. Also, the Germans came up with, how they blow oxygen into engines and they can make them go faster by injecting oxygen injection. They invented that because they needed to get up high to meet the B-17 Raiders. And so they'd get to like 10,000, 11,000 feet, and then they'd get to go ahead from radar. They'd hit the button, and they'd immediately be at 22, 23,000 sitting up there waiting. They got one shot, and it comes from German scientists.
Yeah, well, back in like 1940, you could buy amphetamine over the counter, at the drugstore.
Oh, sure. And you could buy cocaine for Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Somehow we learned maybe. What, real quick, what do you do, Dana? I'm almost out of time. What do you do for a living?
I'm a real estate appraiser.
You're a good one. Thank you. Great way to end the show. Thank you, man. Wonderful call. Thanks. All right, everybody. We are back here next week at 9:00. Adam, pow, home run. You did it again. We're off to the motorcycle show. I got Joe's here. The boys are here. We'll get on the bikes and we're going to go. So that's it. Want to play some tunes? Get us out of here. Why don't we play some? You got any Ozzy? Do you? Hit it. Let's get out of here. Not yet? You don't have Ozzy. Marilyn Manson, Twiggy Ramirez. You don't have enough time. I'll see you next Saturday at 9. Thanks, everybody, for listening.